Yes, correct.
So we'll continue with that TestNG thing. Uh, we'll see the TestNG XML suite and event listeners. So far, whatever we saw is we saw the annotations and its uses, and we also saw how to invoke TestNG from main method. So using that TestNG class, we by reading the class name, we can pass that class name as a parameter to TestNG suite, and we can run the same. So this is how we integrate uh, our framework with respect to our TestNG. The framework, whatever we create, the hybrid framework with respect to TestNG. There should be some mapping kind of thing to let TestNG know these methods are to be executed for this particular test case. So there should be some mapping kind of thing. Right? It can be anything. So in our case, the mapping is the class name itself. Right? Integrating TestNG with our framework. And it is also equivalent to running a TestNG class separately, right? So whatever we have done here, it is equivalent to running a TestNG class by doing something like this. Run as TestNG test. Right? And we saw some attest annotations and setting the priority, right? In a class, any number of attest cases can be there. To set the priority, you give the priority starting from 0. So it is not necessarily from 0. It can be from any number, but the execution order will depend upon the number which we give here, order precedence that we give here. That is one thing to note. Okay. And we'll see this assert actually before going that. So as we saw in this J unit, we have this J unit assert, right? Similar to that, we have this TestNG assert also. So if you see this, there are certain methods that we can use here to assert certain things, right? Assert equals whether it's a Boolean matching or Boolean array matching, byte, byte array, character array. We can even assert an actual collection. We can compare list with a list, right? We can compare double, we can compare float, we can compare int and int array, right? Long, we can compare a map, we can compare a set. So what are the data structures that we have entirely in our Java? We can just assert those things here, right? That is one important thing to note. So based on that, we say whether it's a pass or fail thing. So assert to assert false, everything is there. We'll just try to assert the string here. We'll say assert equals, we'll pass this page element. Yeah, just asserting the string actually. Right. So we'll have this code, piece of code right now here. But before that, we'll see one more thing also. So we have all this thing here. As we saw previously, we can just do a right click and say run as TestNG test. That is also possible. Or we can generate that testng.xml file itself. So simple way of doing that in Eclipse by using the TestNG plugin is that we can just say convert to TestNG. It will not do anything special. It will just generate our testng.xml file for us. Right. if you see here, there's some basic version of that XML file is already available. So just click finish, and we have this testng.xml ready. If you go to the sources tab, you have this, right? So okay. So the name underscore this app test. Just 1 minute. Okay. So what this TestNG file actually did is like it scanned for whatever the class that is actually presented with the annotation at test. We generated some TestNG file, right? So it already included that particular thing inside this testng.xml. If you see this classes tag here, we don't want this particular app test execute. We'll just comment out this. So we just want this driver methods Excel to be executed. This is how you construct an testng.xml. Actually, we know the basic XML structure, right? I don't know sir, what's an XML, right? No confusion in those things, right?
Yes, we know.
Yeah. So a basic TestNG XML looks something like this. It has this XML version, and this encoding is actually very important. UTF-8 is most common encoding techniques. It what character set we are going to use in our XML. That's important. And we have this suite name. So every time when we execute a test, it is actually executed as a suite, right? Test suite. We can have a number of test suite in this XML file. This is one such a test suite. And we have actually test tag here. So whatever we give inside this test tag, it will be executed. And we have this thread count also. So if you wanted to run something parallelly, it is done also. Just give thread count as 1 for simplicity, and we have this test name that will be generated for at the time of result, and we have this classes tag. So inside this classes tag, we have this class tag. So in this class tag only, we will specify, hey, this is the package and the class which I wanted to execute for this particular test, like that. So you can add n number of classes here. Uh, how much number of classes you give, it will be executed. So it is equivalent to doing something like this. Again, the run as TestNG test. But what's the difference between doing this and creating an XML file like this and running a TestNG test? Can anyone say? Why we need to have an XML file like this in first place?
Sorry, I couldn't get your question.
See, we have many methods of running a TestNG test, right? We saw one method is like we can run using this main method itself. That is one way, and we can run using this right click run as TestNG test. That's another way.
Yeah.
And running a TestNG test using this testng.xml is also one way. So why we have to have this method also in first place, running as a testng.xml?
TestNG XML is treated as a starting point of executing the code. Because
No, it is not only the starting point, Sagar. So we saw, right? Okay, I think you were not there in the previous sessions. You can run a testng.xml using this main method also. That is, testng.xml is not necessarily the starting point. You can run using this main method by using this piece of code, right? This is main method, right?
XML basically gives an idea. It helps. It actually defines that what classes we need to execute, and based on the configuration. Basically, TestNG XML is a configuration for executing our.
I mean, you can set the same configuration here also, right? For example, I have set this configuration. What is the test classes, test suite name? Those things I have done here also. So it, see, your answer is partially correct, but what the thing is that you can actually do some equivalent of this particular whatever we did here actually. This. Sorry. See, if you wanted to run this mini classes simultaneously, what you do, it's an array of classes, right? So we can pass n number of class here and run all the classes sequentially, test sequentially. Same thing you can do with XML files. You can give n number of classes. Say it's not running a single TestNG class. You can give n number of classes here and run everything sequentially or parallelly, depending upon the thread count that we give here. And one biggest advantage of using the XML file is that it's very easy to invoke from a command line argument. Right? If you are running the test in Docker or Jenkins and you want to integrate CI/CD pipeline, rather than running a Java file, it is very easy to just run a TestNG file, right?
Okay.
XML file.
That perspective, it is useful. Yeah.
So it is kind of very helpful. Because of that only they designed this testng.xml file to run in CI/CD pipelines and all. It is kind of helpful only.
Can we group the test cases, like include, exclude in code itself programmatically?
See, the include exclude thing can be done via this actually. Only via this. If programmatically you're doing that, whatever classes you are adding here in this class array, all will be executed. Remaining thing will be not executed.
Yeah, it is the class level. Can I execute in method level? Suppose in a particular class I want to execute 2 methods, and in another
Yes.
piece
You
of
can
code.
do. You can do. There are some options to do that in that test itself. So if we go to this test, you can set the enable, disabled, and all. The flag is there, right? You can set enable is equal to true or false. So based on that, also you can control the test individually. So there are many options that are given here. You can play around with the TestNG and do many things actually. Right? So okay, we'll try to. We didn't run this right actually. We'll try to run this TestNG.xml. So if you go this, then it is showing you an option to run as a TestNG suite, right? Not as a TestNG test. It is a suite of test cases. Try to run this. So I think the execution got over. Okay, two test run, two test passed. Right. So test ng class can be run from a main method. As an individual class, it can be run by selecting a test ng test class by running class individual. That is also possible. And adding the all classes together in a XML file, that is also possible. Right. Okay. And one more thing which I wanted to cover in this TestNG thing is the listeners that we saw actually, right? See, if you see this JavaScript kind of things, there are something called event listeners in JavaScript. The listeners kind of concept came from there only actually. Anyone knows about event listener in JavaScript actually?
No, I don't have any idea.
Okay. So the thing is that see, if you are refreshing the page, there something is happening. You're clicking on some buttons in the web page, something is happening. You're scrolling down, something is happening. The pages are very dynamic, right? How they are able to do that is like uh, there are something called event listener in JavaScript in the web pages. Maybe if one is available, I can. If you we'll just try to inspect this. I'm not sure whether that will be present here on. Okay. Okay. It's not actually there. Maybe I'll show it in raw level itself. See, this is how an actual event listener code will look like. It's a JavaScript code actually. You get an element by ID, you add an event listener. If the event listener is, if the click event happen, then this method will be called. Right? If any event happens on a web page, it's an interactive page, right? You give this keyboard event, mouse events, you do as an input, right, to any web page. If any event kind of thing happen, what it should do like that, we can define in event listener in JavaScript in our web page. So similarly, what if we can have some kind of same mechanism in our TestNG or testing frameworks? It's very useful. Uh, can anyone say like a scenario where we need these event listeners actually? What may be the scenarios this particular thing might be needed?
uh, like communication between two sections, like a web service.
Yes, that is also yeah, very good example actually. To if something happens, if I wanted to hit some web services, then it's actually very useful thing to do also, right? Right. And one more thing which can be done is also for example, uh, if I'm generating some report, let's say if I'm generating some report, um, if a test case is passed, I want to constantly execute this code so that I'm writing this report in and taking the screenshot or whatever and putting it in a Word document, or just updating a result as passed or failed in some Excel document or HTML document. What if that can be done using this event listeners? That is also a very good possibility, right?
Can you just repeat it once again, Karthik?
Okay. So, for example, if a test is passed or failed, I wanted to generate a report for the pass or fail thing, right? So, what if I wanted to do that using event listeners? For example, if a test is passed, I want to take the screenshot of the last available web page, and I wanted to append it to an Word document, and I wanted to update an XML or HTML file report, um, and put it somewhere in a report folder or those things. So we never know whether the test might be passing or failing. We have to handle all the logic there itself. We have to assert, and if the assertion fails, then we have to do something. Assertion passes, we have to do something. You're getting it right. Those kind of all the logics we have to handle in the code only. But what if we have a kind of centralized mechanism where we can handle all these things? It is one typical example of using this particular. I mean, even listeners, right? Maybe I'll show some example. Uh, Actually, how you will be able to create a listener is you just create a class. Let's say test test event listeners, and so what I'll do, I'll just implement one interface. If you see this, there is one class called interface called iTest listener, right? I'll implement this. So generally, what happens if we implement an interface? It will we are asked to override its method, right? But we are not getting any error because all the methods here are default methods actually. So we saw what's a default method, right? So it is inherently invoked, right? This default method, but we can override it and give our own implementation also. So if so the methods which are not default, we have to definitely implement in our particular class which are implementing it. But if it's a default method, then we might implement or we might not implement. Depends. So we have this many methods that are useful, right? These are kind of event listeners, you can say. So on test start, whenever the testing is started for the particular test annotated method, I can do some implementation. Hey, what I wanted to do like that. So on success, what I wanted to do. On failure of the test case, what I wanted to do, right? So if or any test case is skipped, for example, if I wanted to run only particular test case, we saw right enable true or false at example. If we say enable is false, the particular test case will be skipped. If that is skipped, what I wanted to do. So I can implement the success percentage also. If a test is failed, but within the success percentage, then what I wanted to do. If a test is failed with timeout, right? If we are waiting for an element and it is timed out in the DOM, then what I wanted to do. On start and on finish of all the test, what I wanted to do. These are very useful, right? So we can do a number of things with these listeners. Every time, if any one of these events happened as mentioned in this particular method, this method will be invoked, and whatever we write in this method uh, will be executed, right? I'll try to do this. So we have implemented this iTest listener. We'll try to override this on failure. So we have overridden method. We can give our own implementation here. So if you check this thing, it is already passing one argument as a parameter, result argument. So what this result argument contains is like many useful data that we might want uh, for many things actually. For example, get end mills will return what time the test has ended. Okay. So get factory parameters, like what are the parameters that are passed to run this particular test cases. Get host, which host and port the test case is running, and we can get the instance of this iTest result itself, right? And we can get the method name with which it is running. We can get the test name of which it is running. We can get the start time. We can get the status. We can get the class in which the test is running. We can get the text context. So it's very useful, right? We can get this success is failure message also. Yeah, obviously it is failed only, but still. So yeah, we can set many attributes also. We can set the status. We can set the test name. many things we can do, right? So what I'll do, I'll just print this. The test which is failed is, I'll just get the name of the test which is failed. And we'll try to do this. To simulate this, what we can do is, we'll create one more test actually. We'll set the priority also. So to explicitly fail a test case, maybe we can assert false. The TestNG data set we have to use. So we are asserting something is true. What if we give false here directly? Obviously, this assertion will fail, right? So once this assertion will fail, that event listener will be triggered. This thing will be triggered, and whatever we have done in that particular method will be executed. But to enable this in our class, we have to do one more step. At the class level, we have to add this listener's annotation. So now our our execution will know, hey, this particular class is listening to something. But what listener it is listening, that also we have to specify, right? We have to specify this entire path of this listener thing. Qualified name that we saw. Keyword driven dot test event listen. This is the thing that we wanted to listen, right? This is the class that we have configured this listeners and all that. So if we add this, then this particular entire test class, TestNG class, will be configured by using this listener. So what are events that are happening in this particular class? This listener will be intercepted actually. Test event listener class will be intercepted, and whatever available there will be executed, not executed, depending upon what event that is happening here. We'll try to put this.
Okay, that means that now the listener class will listen to the all the annotation
Yes,
methods,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
it will throw the result based on the assert.
Yes, yes, yes.
If it fails or something. Okay.
We'll try to do the driver.quit also here. Okay. Now we know for sure this particular thing is definitely going to fail. Right? We'll run this as a TestNG test. Okay. So if you can see here, 3 tests is run, 2 had passed and 1 had failed. Let's see if our, yeah. So now this is executed, right? This is actually called because of the failed test cases, failed test case, right? So we know what test is actually failed is the test case method is actually failed, right? We have given the method name as failed test case. So that thing is actually failed, and because of that, we are getting this error message, whatever we have given there in our event listener, right? So now there are infinite possibilities of using this, right? So what if I wanted to say, okay, this test case is failed, but what if I wanted to log this result somewhere in a logger file or I want to hit the web service to let know something, as Shiva said. Or if you wanted to return, I mean, you wanted to take a screenshot and put it somewhere, we can do many things, right, by listening to these events. So most of the frameworks, automation frameworks, if you see, will use this event listeners actually to do many things. So if you implement this event listeners in your automation framework, it will be kind of very, very helpful for many things. Right? Hello?
Yeah, Karthik.
Okay. So anything with whatever we saw until now, anything you wanted to discuss?
Uh, I, I just want to just check with this, the test suite, how you configured.
The TestNG.xml.
Yes, please. Yeah. So you're just calling the package and the class.
Yeah, class. So we can have a number of classes like this here. So whatever classes that, maybe we'll try to create one more class also and put it here.
So Karthik, we don't have, will we not define any tag for the listeners here in XML file?
What kind of tag actually?
Event listener, any event listener class we don't have to call here, or event listener
No.
class
We don't have to call here. It so only we are annotating the test class with that at listeners annotation if you
Okay.
see.
Okay.
So that will handle everything. See, we are annotating
What if,
with this.
yeah, and what if we want to suppose one test case has been failed because of the browser response or something, and if I want to execute that test case another time, failed test scenario, how can I do it?
So, okay.
Is there any way to
No,
do it?
there is a way actually. Okay, one thing you can do is like you can just call this particular, I mean, okay. So one thing you can do is like in this particular, I mean, the event listener itself on failure. So you can just write some piece of code. You know the test class and all those things, right? In the result itself, you know the test class and all. So you can add this particular piece of class. You're writing the class itself, right? Now we can add this particular piece of class, and we can invoke the particular TestNG test by using this Java code itself. We saw some Java code, right? By using this Java code, we can invoke the thing also. We can set a parameter whether this thing is invoked previously or not. So based on this, we can get the class name and we can invoke the particular thing again and again. Right? But we can set a limit also. Okay, this much time only it has to invoke by maybe by giving some parameter here, some static parameter here. If the static parameter is, I mean, there are some like 2-3 times we wanted to invoke the same test case, we can do that. And there are one more option also, actually. There's something called invocation count, actually. You can do something like this also. So I mean, it is, so what it will do is like it will basically invoke this particular I mean particular method and n number of times which is asking to do, but it's not related to any failure pass event. But you can do something like this also. Just wanted to know that you know. So this invocation count is actually kind of very, very useful in certain areas where you can I mean, you wanted to do certain things over and over again to execute or to pass different data to a particular web page, And those kind of times, this invocation count is kind of very, very useful.
Mm.
In this way also, you can invoke a particular test again, actually.
So invocation counts basically I am restricting the function of based on the number of execution. Suppose it as it is true, this method will execute only twice in a particular test run when I'm executing the test cases.
Yes,
So
but we also have to be careful in this particular scenario because, for example, once this is actually, for example, let us say if we put this invocation count 2 here in this input selection, but what if we want see we have a click the submit button here, and it has navigated to the second page, right? The submitted page, right? So if we try to invocate this method again, and you find to drive.find by email ID and all, it will fail actually, right?
right.
So
Right, because because the page is now the page is different.
Yes. So while trying to do this, we have to be very careful in what we are trying to achieve by using this. That is also an important aspect to consider.
Okay.
And actually, there are many options that you can make use of. So you can see, right, this always run, but these are the options that you can use, but you have to be very, very careful. If you read this description, it says this test method will be always run if it depends on a method that had failed. Okay. So we call some method here, and that piece of code failed. We are doing something assertions, and that piece of code failed. Again, this particular method will be executed. This is also one way of achieving running a failed test case, right?
Yeah.
So again, you have to be very, very careful because it will be infinitely running actually. And we saw the success percentage, right? We can set the success percentage also here, like 70-80%. If it is success, then we can say we can add an event listener there on success, but with a percentage, and that will be called. Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I am aware of other annotations, but this invocation count, it's very new to me. I need to check.
Okay, invocation count can be useful in many scenarios, but we would have also thought, hey, this what if some kind of, maybe I'm not exactly getting the scenario where I can say this, but for example, we are using this demo.guru99. What if I wanted to put some random email ID and check some edge cases and all by clicking the submit button again and again, testing pass and fail test cases? Many times we would have wanted, how can I do this without calling an extra function in this case? Like there are many scenarios that we'll encounter actually in real-time project for these scenarios. So in those kind of scenarios, this invocation count will be very useful. But we just have to careful that your web page should be in the starting point where it should have been while invocating or while triggering that particular method. That thing is very important. And
To continue with the same kind of a scenario, okay, what I want to check is, like, is it any other way, assuming the one of the test has failed, right? What just Sagar has asked also, Okay, you just showed us using the invoke. Okay, is it some other way that
Yes,
we
yes.
can?
Actually, it is there. Actually, I'm just checking for that. See, okay, I'm not getting that. Maybe I'm missing something. The thing is that you have this. Whenever you have this target folder, right? You can set this output directory of this TestNG and all, and there will be always something called TestNG fail.xml that will be generated. Maybe that is also one way of doing that.
So you'll be having a separate XML,
Yes, yes.
and so you will be mentioning there. So whichever occurs, then it will be.
Yes, it is always the failed test cases generated is always in the TestNG fail.xml automatically. I'll show that. Our TestNG.xml will look like this, and if we wanted to execute something, it will be executed. Okay, yeah. See, if you want to run some failed test case, there's some test output folder that is generated. You see this TestNG fail.xml, right? So again, if something failed, then we can using the listeners, we can run this TestNG fail.xml alone. Whatever classes that are failed, that will be added automatically here, and that will we can execute that also. We can execute in that way also.
Got it.
So that is all. Maybe I'll just present this in some other class. Maybe I don't know what I'm missing here. Maybe the output folder, I think. Okay, anyway, so that is also one possibility. This invocation count is one possibility. Calling the same method using the listener on fail event by invoking this particular test case using the driver method. That is also one possibility. And running this failed test case.xml, that is also one possibility. Right? I mean, there are see, it also depends upon how you are designing your framework also. What if I have all these failure path data in the Excel itself? For example, it's not like you have to do only in this way. So let's say you are designing an Excel. We have this thing, right? We have this particular test case. We are calling some sequence of actions or whatever. You are just having this particular thing, yes or no. Right? What if you have one more column? Let's say we have this column B as execute yes or no. What if we have one more column here for test result pass or failed? So whenever using this event listener, you can update this test result as pass or fail. So once this test execution is over, let's say if the particular execution is failed here and you mark as failed in this particular Excel sheet, and what if at after all method, after all hook is there, right? We saw one annotation called after all the test cases executed, what if I wanted to execute all the test cases in this particular sheet which are marked as failed? Again, I can do one more read here, iterate all the test cases which are only failed and execute the particular test cases alone. That is also one possibility, right? So it is also depending upon how, like how you design your framework also. When I was in CTS, we had implemented that kind of thing only. So we have the status passed or failed. If it's passed, it will be updated as passed. Failed, it will be updated as failed. Our code will read the test cases what are updated as failed here, and it will try to invoke this one more time. So that is also one possibility if you are. I mean, if you're designing a framework in such a way to do that.
Yeah. I also occurred with same kind of input to be implemented once.
Okay, you actually did this.
I tried and it got executed, but not implemented in the real time. But I have implemented the same kind of approach in Excel sheet. But what happens is like I'll be having that data coming into the Excel sheet and reading it again. So if it is fail equals to fail, then the respective test case will be again executed.
Okay. Okay. Actually, okay. I forgot one thing. Actually, I wanted to show that thing also. It is also very useful actually. Um, maybe later. Neutrons. Okay, I will show this actually. It is actually very useful. Okay. So this is also one very good way of doing that actually. Actually, there is something called this is also one of the listeners that is provided by TestNG itself. So we have this retry analyzer actually. Let's say we have something count kind of mechanism. So what we wanted to do is see whenever the result we have this result coming as a hook, right? So we'll just try to, and if you see this is a return type is boolean actually, right? So wait. Okay. Actually, okay. So if you go here, I mean, these are the result of the test that we are trying to execute actually, right? So same thing. We have so many. I mean, so many options that we have to get at the runtime. Maybe we'll go this out. Let's say the test field is so we can implement this kind of mechanism. Actually, if count is lesser than retry, and we can just say count plus plus, and we can just say return true. Otherwise, we can just return false. We'll try to do this actually. So we can add this listener to any test actually. Right? We'll try to test that actually. We have this something called retry analyzer. We can just give the okay. We'll disable it for now. I think okay, we'll try to run this. Okay. Okay, we'll just check this. See, now the actual method is retried actually, right? It is actually retried 2 times. There are 3 test cases. When we have disabled 2, and yeah, there are we have run 1. There are 1 failures, and there are 2 retries for the same thing. So because of that, we got this particular thing. This test fail is actually this. I mean, where we are getting this, we are getting it right. Where we are getting this message, we are getting this message from that failure hook that we have created in using that listener actually. This test event listener. So this is called 2 times because the particular method is actually called 2 times due to retry. You got the entire point, actually, everyone? Or is there some confusion here?
As of now, it's okay. Give it a try.
Okay, you can retry using this also. There are event listeners for this also actually. I think it is more elegant way of doing that actually, right? Hello, Sagar. Sagar went out. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's
Okay.
disconnected.
Mithun or Vinay, is that okay?
Yeah.
So just play around with this listeners, event listeners in TestNG. It's kind of very helpful in many mechanisms, and it kind of helps our automation framework design also very easier. Can play around with this. So this TestNG also provides options to run the test. If we have implemented some thread kind of mechanism, there are many options to run this test using this attribute that we set in this test annotations. We have this event listener also to listen to success and failure messages, failure events. Those kind of things also we can play around with. Okay. So I mean, these are all the overall things that I wanted to cover with respect to TestNG. We'll start with Cucumber maybe next class. I mean, everyone is available tomorrow for 1 or 1.5 hour session because I wanted to cover the missed out sessions also. I mean, I was not available for a few days, right?
So, what do you want to cover, Karthik?
Actually, I wanted to start with Cucumber tomorrow.
Okay. I think we'll just ping in the group. Let's see the count. So.
Okay. Fine. I mean, these are the things which I wanted to cover today. Anything you wanted to discuss apart from this?
As of now, from my side, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, fine. Then shall we wrap up the session?
Okay.